hundreds of thousands of people all chanting this same sound. The tears just started to stream down my face. The energy was so unspeakably beautiful and full of just incomparable love. And I just remember looking at this woman who was there with us and just looking at her, and we're going, there are no words for this. Welcome, everyone, to our next episode of Spiritually Challenged. I'm Jay Sherrick. I'm here with my writing partner,
David Ron,
and with my good friend and neighbor,
Steve.
We get together to discuss various ideas in spirituality. The concept of the show being that I have spent a lot of time thinking about spiritual stuff.
and Steve and I have avoided it at all costs.
I think avoided it at all costs is sort of a strong way of putting it.
We've made it again to another episode, and
You offered me a soda, and I said no. And now I'm seeing that you guys have these flavored drinks, and I have water, and I'm a little disappointed in my decision. But this is a spiritual practice too, right? It's just abstinence from any joy.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that what spirituality is?
There's a Sanskrit word for that called tapasya.
Yeah, it's tapasya. I'm drinking tapasya.
Well, no, you're practicing.
I'm practicing tapasya with a flavorless beverage.
It's really hard on him.
Is it considered tapasya to be drinking classic root beer when your real favorite is black cherry?
I think that's really hard. I think that's hard.
All right, so we're in the same boat.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about the illusion that we live in.
I think we're ready.
I'm going to try and do a small ramp in of some of the concepts that we have talked about, which is to say, in the beginning, there was just this energy that had the awareness, consciousness of I am, and in order to get to know itself, in order to have experiences of itself in as many permutations as could possibly be conjured, it took form. It created form. And that moment of going from formlessness and singularity, I am, into form and plurality is the moment of creation, the moment of separation.
I thought you said there's only one I am.
There is.
So in what way does it morph into plurality?
The one I am, David, I bet, could explain this.
Yeah, look.
Okay, let me redirect the question.
This is super, super simple, right?
Okay.
Think of the I am as the ocean.
You've used this analogy before, but go ahead.
Have I?
It's
such a good one, right?
Yeah.
And the drops of water are still part of the ocean when they separate.
Yes.
So I am, the original I am is like the ocean. Consciousness is one big ocean.
Yeah.
And then in the great separation, each drop of water becomes separate from one another, but they're still part of the ocean.
And where are these drops of water now? Are they still in the ocean, or they're on the beach?
They're not actual drops of water. You're being a little literal.
I understand.
David is now the host of the show. See what Okay, no. So there is formlessness, energy, just that has no form, and in order to experience itself in some way, it has to have form. I mean, there's the experience of me having this conversation with you right now. It couldn't exist except for the fact that there's the
but many experiences can occur without form.
Like what?
Like I could be asleep and be experiencing something in a dream, and what's the form I know is me, but there's no
well, there are references
that I am.
In your dream to physical forms and stuff like that. I'm not saying that there are no experiences. I believe what a great being would say is in its formless state, consciousness is full of experience. It's full of enormous bliss. But in order to experience, the nitty-gritty of it all,
right?
Nitty-gritty
is a spiritual,
very spiritual term.
Okay.
Yeah, it comes from the Upanishad.
The great beings.
Yes, I heard it in other contexts.
It's Sanskrit.
Okay, so here's the thing, though, because what you're actually asking David about, like the drops and, what you're stumbling on is exactly what the topic of this conversation is, which is
the illusion. The
illusion is very hard to...
Can I explain the illusion to him?
Sure.
Can you do it sort of using the ocean?
I could.
And drops?
Well, I'm going to try to. So I think what Jay's going to say is it is an illusion that the drops are actually separate. They're actually still the ocean. Right?
Yeah, I mean, sure.
Right?
I'll go with this. Here, let me see if I can say it. So you're going, are the drops, or are they the ocean? And that's the whole point. The illusion makes it So we're convinced of this physical reality in a number of ways, and that opens the door for us to have, or for consciousness within us to have more vivid experiences.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so talking about the illusion, in my mind, I break it down into there are four qualities. There are a gazillion qualities for what make up the illusion, but in my mind there are four main ones. And the first one is separation. So the quality of separation is one of the key ingredients of the illusion, because consciousness goes from this feeling, this experience of oneness, I am all that exists, to suddenly creating an illusion, a barrier, so that even though I am the same person as you, the same I am, the same awareness, the same consciousness, the same content as you, when I look at you, I see someone else. And I actually project onto you this whole almost story about what it's like to be Steve. And I've got all these preconceived notions. And that's separation. And as a result of that, I can have all these experiences. I can feel envy, I can feel disgust, I can feel love, I can feel hatred, I can have a fight with you, I can have a conversation. All these experiences come up as a result of being different from something.
Is it? Would you say it's mostly envy?
I would say a lot of it is envy at this particular.
Yeah, that's kind of how I. That's
in this
what
lifetime. There's been a lot. Yeah. So separation is essential for consciousness to have experiences, right? Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
And separation is one of the four main components of the illusion.
I'm making up the four. I'm making that up because there are people.
That did not come from a great being.
No, that came from my piece of paper for the notes for the show. Okay, so another main quality of the illusion is forgetfulness. Forgetfulness works on two levels. We have all forgotten, even though we are I am, and that I am was God, we've all forgotten that connection. When we came into this world, we forgot the identity, the true identity of who I am is, and we have been sort of shrunk into this awareness of just being this solitary person. So if we remembered we were God, basically your spiritual journey would be over.
Is there some point in the future at which all of us will remember it?
Yeah. Yes, we talked about in this other episode.
That's the rapture, right? We leave our shoes and we all remember.
It's the part where you lose your shoes.
It has to do with your shoes.
No, well, we did talk about, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but we did talk about that. We are all on the journey.
Right. And the end is enlightenment.
Through lifetime and lifetime. And
it's the end of forgetfulness in the context that you're describing.
And back to the oneness.
Back to
the ocean.
The drops go back.
Yep. The drops merge back into the ocean.
And this is what happens Tuesday. Okay, carry on. Sorry.
Okay, so forgetfulness happens. The one level on which forgetfulness happens is we forget that we are God.
Yes.
And yes, the remembrance of that is the path back to enlightenment.
So it's like my anniversary.
You forget.
I forget. And then when I remember, it's like I'm God.
That's good.
Does the path back to enlightenment occur at the same instant for all beings? Does everybody's journey come to an end at the same time?
As I understand it, you've come into this illusion, and then we all, in our own separate ways, in our own time, we ultimately make it back. We have to make it back. It's just only end.
Everybody's got their own timeline.
There are great beings, and we've talked about this. Yes. There are great beings who have reached the fulfillment of their human potential. Theoretically, they will then move on to other levels of existence, which are, I think, typically non-physical. I don't really know. I don't understand what happens beyond the human level. Or they may choose to come back and help other people, as we talked about bodhisattva, But everyone eventually will make it, and that's just sort of built into the framework.
And so does this journey go on forever?
Yeah, I mean, what is forever? I don't know.
Steve,
I would suspect.
Time is a serpent eating its own tail.
Got
Any comment to that?
No, I feel good. That's helpful.
Asked, answered.
Between the serpent in the ocean.
In the ocean, it's a sea serpent. The sea serpent's tail is in.
And where are the serpent's shoes?
Interesting. The serpent's
That's
shoes.
a really good question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, but what we haven't gotten to is what is the other form of forgetfulness? Can someone guess what the other form of forgetfulness is?
I think you told me, but I forgot.
like sometimes I go to the supermarket.
And you don't buy the radish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it anything to do with that?
Now, well, maybe, but that wasn't what I was thinking. What I was thinking is the other form of forgetfulness is this journey that we've been talking about, where we ultimately come into enlightenment and remember that we are God. Although that journey is made up of thousands of lifetimes.
Oh, so we forget our past lives.
Yes.
I see. Yes.
For the most part.
Vlad.
But Vlad, you've not, right.
I forgot Vlad. I don't know anything about Vlad. I was just told about it.
Oh, you were told you did not.
I don't have any memories of it.
But somebody...
There are people that have memories of past
Well,
lives.
that's my question. But this was somebody who had a memory of your past life.
Well, no, this was guidance.
Guidance is no longer in a physical form. They're in a much higher perspective. They can see
and so they have
everything, and so they can see what
Okay.
David has been up to in past lifetimes. And so,
Right.
But as I think you guys were in the direction you're heading is, as we as human beings get more and more evolved and get closer and closer to the remembrance of, oh, I am God, this is the one, and we start to experience that, it's very natural that we begin to have little insights or big insights of past lives.
So
the forgetfulness of that begins to break down as well.
Yes. So in this moment we're in now, none of us have recollections of our past lives. You don't know that you were Vlad, a higher being told you that. But as each of us get closer and closer to God, we will have better recollection of our past lives.
But you
is
may
that right?
Yeah, but you may have had some recollections of past lives, and you don't attribute that to past lives. For example, deja vu. What is deja vu? Have you had the experience of deja vu in your life? They're struggling with that. I'll give you an example. So when I was in my 20s, I was reading a book called Billy Bathgate by E.L. Doctorow, right? Okay, so I was reading this book, and it opens with some mafia guys literally putting some dude in cement shoes and dropping him into the ocean. And when I read that, my whole body just like freaked out and went, but it was really hard for me to get through that. I
suspect.
Yeah, I strongly believe that on some level, I don't have it doesn't necessarily have to do with mafia, but in some level, that experience of being trapped and drowning and being stuck down there or something like that is a memory that I can't recall, but on some level it lives in my system, and karmically it's within me.
Yep.
And that book triggered it. So we do have recollections, and I think you guys probably do too. I've had over the course of the 30, 40 years that I've been meditating every night, I've had a number of experiences, and interestingly, a lot of them have to do with people in my life, particularly my children. I remember, I see someone in a past experience, and I realize, that was one of my children. Anyway, you come into this life with kind of a little bit with a fresh slate, at least in terms of your memory, and then you have to sort of rediscover everything all over again from this new perspective, as opposed to being, I did this and this and this and this.
So you will, as you evolve into new lives and you get closer and closer to returning to God, you remember more and more of your past, and you will realize with more clarity why the cement shoes at the bottom of the ocean is so triggering for you.
I think generally speaking, yes, but I don't think it's perfectly linear.
Yeah.
I think you sort of jump around and
okay, but I'll
let you know as we go. Okay, but so we talked about the illusion consisting of the illusion of separation. We're all different from each other. The illusion of forgetfulness, which is I don't remember that I am God, and I also don't remember everything that I did prior. I'm just sort of like here, what the hell am I doing here? Another aspect of the illusion is mortality. We have at the basic core of our beings the sense that we could fucking die and that would be bad. Basically,
I'm familiar with that.
David lives in that state. The truth is we are eternal. Nothing bad can ever happen to us. Truthfully, the core of who we are. But the experiences we have in life are more heightened by having these stakes of, shit, I could die. I mean, David and I are writers. Whenever we write a script, the first comment that comes back to us is always, more stakes. Can we have more stakes? Because stakes make experiences, like the stories in a movie, they make them more vivid. They make them more exciting. There's something to care about, So part of the illusion that we live in includes this sense of mortality. It gives us the sense that something really bad could happen. I could lose my child. I could lose my loved one, my mother, my grandfather, I could lose my own life.
And is this idea that we forget, is it specific to mortality, or is it about anything bad that could happen?
It's got to be specific to death. I mean, we're the only species that is aware of their own mortality, right?
I don't know. I mean, we're certainly the most aware species on this planet. Okay. But a dog is scared of, getting... You know something bad's going to happen if there's a car coming right. It runs.
My dog doesn't.
Yeah, okay, except for your dog. And then the last element that I think is relevant to our conversation at least is time and space. So that comes with form, the illusion of time and space. In order to have an experience in the physical world, there's a need for time and space. If I'm going to feel bad about something, I need a period of time to feel bad about it in. Or if I'm going to be happy about it has to happen within a period of time. And space and time are linked, as you probably can, speak to more eloquently than I can.
How are space and time an illusion? What is the relationship between the idea of illusion and the idea of space and time?
Well, I
think he's flummoxed you.
Oh, well, that's good, because that's the idea of the show is to make it so I sound like an idiot. So you're doing a very good job.
It's not
hard.
It's not that hard. Yeah. I don't want to go, that was difficult. Thanks for pointing it out on episode 20.
The idea is that by creating form, in order to create form, you had to create space and time. Yeah. Form requires time, and to go from point A to point B, so that must be, if it's going to take time to get there, then there's space. Space and time.
But why is that an illusion? Like, I understand forgetfulness creates an illusion. I understand not knowing about my past lives. But what is the illusion about space and time? Is space and time something that isn't really here, but I think it's here?
No, well, in reality, there is just this present moment.
I see.
And there's just energy. And so energy has created this illusion that we live in this physical world, and it's very real to us, but the physical world is made of space and time.
I think what Jay's trying to say, is time is not an illusion when you're here in the great illusion. Time is made real here for you.
Experiences.
But when you go back to the ocean, then there's no time.
So when I one day go back to the ocean, meaning I become one with God again, the idea of time will not exist. I will have no sense of that.
If you read some of these books where there's communication with souls who haven't even really become enlightened, but who have passed from this life and are sort of in this interim non-physical plane, they even say, I'm talking about time, but up here or wherever I am, time doesn't really exist the way it does for you. But in order for me to make sense for you, as I'm explaining this, I will talk about time.
Everything you're telling me is based on time. You're telling me there was a time when the ocean was one, and there's a time when I'm Steve. But
think about it this way.
Those are all completely time-based events.
Right. That is part of the illusion that you're having all these experiences in a continuum, which we call time. But here, maybe this will help. If you were to meditate right now, if you're a really good meditator, and you could close your eyes and stop your mind from thinking and just go into a place of absolute thoughtlessness, time would stop. Time would disappear. You would just be, I am. There'd be no reference to the world. There'd be no time. You'd just be in this infinite moment of the present. And then the second you open your eyes, you'd be back in time, or the doorbell rings or whatever, it would bring you back in time. But if you stopped thinking is what, sort of creates this whole illusion that we're living in. The second we stop thinking and get into a place of absolute stillness, there's no time. you can even drop into a state of such pure I am awareness that there's no body, there's no thinking, there's no reality, there's no world, there's no children. It's just all there is I am. In that moment, that's the truth. That's the truth out of which, think of it almost like a movie projector. Out of with that truth, this projector is projecting an entire movie out there. And so when you go and you're actually like getting into the bulb of the projector, I guess they still have bulbs, projectors. But in that pure center of things, there's no time. And then from that timeless, energetic reality of I am, this whole illusion is created, is projected. And now we are experiencing it. And the game is to, over many, many lifetimes, get back to that experience of I am. As human beings, we will always, to some extent, live with one foot in the illusion because we have to in order to be part of this world. It's just the illusion gets much easier and much more pleasant as we begin to understand it and we begin to work with it and we align ourselves with the dynamics of it as opposed to what we typically do most of our lifetimes, which is fight against it and create difficulty.
So, I mean, in the end, what you're saying is we all live inside the bulb of a projector.
Exactly.
I think that's sort of where I helps me a lot.
The projector has feet, and it's at the bottom of the ocean.
But your whole edifice fails if it turns out projectors no longer have bulbs. Right? That's the one piece that you had to double check on.
Then we're in real trouble.
Yeah.
But let me just say, the idea of spirituality, because guidance used to be clear about this with me all the time, which is the idea of spirituality isn't to reject the illusion and to throw it away and say this is bullshit and this is more real. The idea of spirituality is to learn to live here within the context of the illusion and sort of master it, basically, and work with it and enjoy it and play in it. It's an amazing reality that we live in, and then at some point move on to whatever is the next reality.
I can understand.
I think that projector thing really helped because suddenly Steve is
Steve's on board.
So let's take a look at how having the illusion creates more vivid experiences. Like if you take an example, let's say you're a soldier, you're fighting in a battle, and let's say you're a soldier that's across enemy lines and you're trapped and you're trying to get back. If you believe in the illusion that you're mortal, that those enemy combatants are somebody else, they're bad, they're other people, that you are not God, you've forgotten that you're God, you've forgotten that you've lived many, many lifetimes, that's a terrifying experience. That is a very vivid, powerful experience. But take that same experience, let's say, and now consciousness, let's say if consciousness, when they created the world, forgot or decided not to create an illusion. And so you're in that same situation and you're like, oh, but really I'm God and all these people are really me and I can't really die. And it's all a game, and suddenly that experience,
it's less joyful.
It's a lot more joyful, but it's less vivid. It's not, if you're consciousness and you want to know everything about yourself and you want to know what it's like to be a terrified soldier in that situation, or you want to know what it's like to be the king of Siam, and you want to know everything. What does love, love, feel like in all these types of environments? Good, bad, friendly, enemy, joyful, unpleasant, painful. All these layers of illusion, really, the way I see it, is the purpose of them is to create an environment where consciousness can have experiences with itself in a manner that makes them really vivid.
So you're saying that the trade-off of feeling vivid is worthwhile even given the fear and terror that you may feel being in the midst of a battle.
Well, what I'm saying is the purpose of creation was for consciousness to experience itself in as broad a variety as possible.
For good or bad.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but now as we become more enlightened, the illusion begins to break down and there's a different trade-off. Suddenly there's less fear, there's less misery, there's less hardship.
Hang on.
There's that look again. Which
I thought that you only become truly enlightened at that moment far, far in the future where I am about to become one with God. I did not think that I ever become enlightened in my little, very, very short lifetime. And true? Or
You
will
might.
Can I become
Just
enlightened
doing
in
this
my own life?
podcast might enlighten you.
So every being can become more enlightened over the course of their own life. They don't have to wait until...
not only is it possible,
Yeah.
but almost by definition, you are becoming more enlightened in the context of every lifetime.
But so now, when I start my new life, do you go back to your original state of enlightenment, or you pick up from where you left off?
It's not completely linear, but you are adding levels of intelligence to yourself, and you're growing more and more enlightened.
So with each rebirth, reincarnation, whatever you wanted to call it, of yourself, you are more and more.
But it's you break it down even more than that. I would say with each passing minute,
Yes.
you're becoming more enlightened. Because you are learning something in this minute, whether it seems significant to you or not. And it's either something which is adding to your awareness, or it's on a trajectory that is showing you what's not true, so eventually you can see what's true. So in a way, that's still helping your trajectory towards enlightenment.
But most of what I and most people learn from minute to minute does not relate to knowing that I used to be somebody else in a past life and knowing that I am actually one with all of you. They're more mundane, more typical.
But
sort of
as we move into greater states of enlightenment,
Yes.
I believe, we all begin to see that what we call mundane is really just as spiritual as anything else.
If I was to sort of put this on a timeline where there was the time when we were all one, and there's the time where I, or all of us, will find enlightenment.
Right.
Like, where is my current life? Am I in the middle? Am I towards the top? Am I towards the bottom? Like, is there any way to know that?
Where do you think Steve is?
I think
Wait, you just up to David to decide?
I'm going to say you're about halfway there.
I threw it to David because David is being very quiet, and
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of our listeners out there like
Wondering
I
what
need more David.
David's
yeah,
thinking.
I need more David, more David.
I'm saying you're halfway there.
But really, what I was going to say was, where do you think you are, Steve?
I'm asking you. What do you mean? Where
do you think you are, David? David, where do you think you are?
I think I'm 2/3 there.
Based on what?
No idea.
Okay.
But I'm not a caveman, with no awareness. I'm moving in a direction. The direction points, I think, towards wisdom. And I still have a ways to go, but so that I'm just putting myself somewhere in the middle there.
I just want to say that from my perspective, you two are very far along on your journey. The fact that you're here, even pretending to be
interested,
not
skeptical
about
it,
not just here for the soda.
Yes, exactly. But the fact that we're here having a spiritual conversation, these sorts of things, that you would take the time and the interest to do this are indicative of the fact that you are highly evolved beings, what people might call old souls and things like that. You wouldn't have any interest. You wouldn't have shown up to be part of this podcast if you weren't well along your way towards enlightenment.
I appreciate that, genuinely.
I think your hang up with time is the only thing that's keeping you from merging back into the ocean with your life.
Let's suppose, for whatever reason, you had not asked me to do the podcast, you hadn't come up with the idea, you had somebody else.
Wishful thinking, but okay.
Exactly. Many of our listeners have similar thoughts. And I have otherwise lived the same life.
Right.
But I don't know everything that you've shared with me. I've not had these experiences of talking to each other. But otherwise, I'm exactly the same. But I don't know any of this stuff about the illusion because I haven't read about it. I don't know about it.
Right.
So now do I slip back down the line because of this one thing that I'm now part of? Or
probably the least important part of this all is the intellectual noise that I'm making and the words.
But wait, you just said that the fact that we're on the podcast,
we are, but
what makes the podcast
that
is
you're
the
in this
words.
environment. Well, no, there's an energy to this.
But it comes from our conversation. And our words and our
but the
thoughts.
conversation is in many ways reflective of the energy. You're in some way attracted to the energy of this podcast to be a part of it.
Yes.
If you did not participate in this podcast, because that's who you are, you'd find another way to connect with that in this lifetime, it would present itself and you'd go, okay, sure, yeah, I'll try that. It has nothing to do with this podcast. It has to do with you. You've attracted this situation to yourself because of who you are, which is, in my opinion, a very evolved soul. By the way, I mean, we talked about this in the very first podcast. I brought you in here to be a skeptic, and I thought you were going to be like shooting everything down as a scientist as you are. And I was amazed at how open-minded you were.
Except about time.
You were a little bit touchy when we get into
There's
time.
a line.
But, and I said at the time, it's like, oh my God.
We need a better skeptic.
Yeah, we need a less evolved soul here in order to
So literally,
be in trouble.
in sort of the terms you've used, you thought that I turned out to be more evolved than
Much
you imagined
more
I was.
evolved than I
Right.
thought you were. I don't know. I'm not going to go around judging like.
No, I understand. I totally understand.
Oh, well, let me add another thought. One of the other many refrains from guidance, they would often say, one of the greatest barriers to enlightenment is the preconception that we have of what enlightenment is. We've decided in our heads, okay, enlightenment looks like this. And as we're talking about,
Right.
we have this feeling, okay, enlightenment would feel like this, and I would be like this, and then I'd be experiencing this. And guidance would say again and again and again, it's not that. And the fact that you think it's that is one of the main obstacles that you'll have to get over. Enlightenment is much closer to what we are all experiencing right now than any of us realize.
Yeah, I believe that.
All right, so those are the 4 qualities of the illusion that we live in, at least according to me. Those are the 4 qualities. The illusion of separateness, the illusion of forgetfulness, the 2 kinds of forgetfulness, the illusion of mortality, and the illusion of time and space. And when you put them all together, they make for a very convincing and compelling reality. And because we all believe in this reality, we as individual units of consciousness are able to have all these incredible and vivid experiences of all kinds, good and bad. It's interesting to me, though, that we live in a world where, there are people talking about, we all live in a simulation. There's no reality to this. It's a computer simulation. And there's a lot of people with all these theories. And it's just interesting to me because I think the reason that there's some sort of connection to that, because those ideas, seem, never thought of myself as living in a computer simulation, but it's really not that far. On some level, that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
And I think a movie like Matrix, it's basically saying, oh, we're like projectors, projecting this reality that isn't real. And then the movie is, well, if you walk into the reality, you can work your way out of it. I mean, it's sort of an allegory for spirituality.
Can I be Neo?
Yeah, well, another way to look at this is great beings say that this illusion that we all live in, what they call Maya, this illusion is like a dream. When we're in it, it seems very real, but eventually we all become enlightened. And that's like waking up. And suddenly you're like, oh, this is reality. That whole reality that I had been living in, I can see now that wasn't completely real. It's like waking up from a dream.
No, I understand. And I mean, I was thinking that a lot of what you described about when you're in battle, in the moment of the battle, it's vivid and frightening, but if you frame it a different way, it's not frightening. That's a lot of how I sort of think about dreams. Like, in the moment, it's vivid and scary, but it just reminds me of that. But when you wake up, you realize, it's just a dream.
We were talking before about how we can remember our past lives, and I think that one of the main ways that we can connect with past lives is through our dreams. In fact, recently I had this experience in a dream where it was very vivid and very real, and it felt to me similar in that feeling that I get when I connect something that to me feels like, oh, that is me having a glimpse of a past life. But this one was in the future. So this was in the world where there is no time. I was experiencing something happening in the future, which was really beautiful, actually. Should I tell the experience real quick? I'll try and give it just a thumbnail of it just because I feel like here we are in a podcast. In the experience, it seemed to me we were living in a more evolved version of our planet. That's why I felt like it was the future. I was with this group, and we were going into this giant stadium, but bigger than any football stadium, like 8 football stadium, or even bigger. And everyone in the stadium was chanting or singing some sound like Om. Maybe it was Om. But there were the entire hundreds of thousands of people all chanting this same sound. And when we walked into that stadium and there was this chanting, I'm getting emotional just talking about it because it was so powerful and so vivid in my dreams. The tears just started to stream down my face in the dream, and when I woke up, my face was wet.
That was me.
Yeah, you peed all over my face. Is that what happened? But the energy in this arena was so unspeakably beautiful and full of just incomparable love. And I just remember looking at this woman who was there with us and just looking at her, and we're going, there are no words for this. It was just so beautiful.
Why do you know that was in the future?
The way it made sense to me was, as we all evolve and we all become more and more enlightened minute by minute, as we sort of discussed, we will reach a point of critical mass where our species, we go into higher levels of existence. I believe that there are civilizations out there in other planets, other worlds that are more evolved than we are. And we will one day become an evolved civilization. We may destroy ourselves first and then have to start over. I don't know. But at some point we will become. And to me, this experience was, this is what the planet will feel like when we're all evolved. And it was incredible. You couldn't believe it was on a physical plane because it's so different. The level of that energy was so different.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So, in closing,
we live in an illusion.
No. Well, I'm not going to recap the whole thing, but I just want to leave on a very high note,
spiritual note.
A spiritual note, which is to suggest actually, for us all to see ourselves as these great beings who are wise souls and who are in the process of becoming enlightened. All right. Well, thank you very much for being here, and we'll
see you next time.
Yeah. Thank you.